The sky was clear that evening, but something was off. In the calm of the desert, where stars shone like distant diamonds and the night air carried the scent of earth and sand, a silent force arrived, one that would forever alter the course of history. At first, no one noticed. The town of Crimson Ridge was a quiet place, nestled far from the bustling cities of the world. People here lived simple lives, built on hard work and deep traditions. They weren't used to the sudden, unexplained. So when a massive ship, cloaked in a shimmering aura, descended from the heavens with a soft hum, it didn't seem real. It wasn't until the ship landed, sending a dust storm through the streets, that the first person saw it, a local farmer, hard at work beneath the burning sun. "By the heavens," he whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. And that was just the beginning. Within hours, the town was abuzz with rumors of strange lights, figures in silver armor, and the deep, rumbling sound of a machine unlike anything they had ever heard. But it was the soldiers who truly felt it first. The call went out to military personnel across the region. In a secluded government base, one officer, Colonel James Broderick, stared at the sky through a cracked window, his face grim. "What the hell is that?" he muttered to himself, watching as the dark shadow of the ship loomed above the town. It was colossal, at least 5 times the size of any aircraft the humans had ever built. He had no time to prepare. Within minutes, he was in the air, heading straight for the site, joined by a handful of other military personnel. The ship was unlike anything they had ever seen. No markings, no logos, just an imposing presence in the air. And no sign of who, or what, was inside. "Ready the guns," Colonel Broderick ordered, his voice steady, though his stomach churned with uncertainty. As the ship descended and the crowd gathered in the town square, a strange calm settled over the area. The aliens, or whatever they were, seemed almost peaceful. No weapons were drawn. No aggressive movements made. Instead, they hovered in place, silent, waiting for something. Then, without warning, a beam of light shot down from the craft, striking the ground directly in front of the gathered townspeople. The air vibrated with energy, and from the beam emerged a figure, tall, slender, with silvery skin that gleamed under the moonlight. The crowd gasped and stepped back, instinctively reaching for the weapons they had never used. The figure raised its hand, and the crowd froze. Colonel Broderick and his soldiers, trained to handle all kinds of threats, felt a rising unease. They had faced wars, disasters, and political turmoil, but this was different. This was something beyond human understanding. The figure spoke in a language no one could comprehend. The sound of its voice was almost melodic, yet distant. But the humans felt it, like a voice that was speaking directly to their minds. It wasn't the language that caught their attention, it was the words. "Why do you still use such outdated tools?" The words hit them like a ton of bricks. The voice was cold, curious, and undeniably powerful. Weapons that have long lost their place in the universe, relics from a time of weakness. Colonel Broderick felt his breath catch in his throat. The aliens, they knew about humanity's weapons. And they were baffled by them. He glanced at the soldiers around him. Could this be a test? An evaluation of humanity's worth? His hand instinctively went to the weapon at his side. A handgun, worn from years of service, a symbol of human history. "Who are you?" Broderick demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. "What do you want?" The alien figure paused, and for a moment, there was only silence. The crowd stood still, unsure of what to do next. "We came to learn," the figure replied, its voice sending a shiver down Broderick's spine. "We studied your planet, your people, your history. But one thing we do not understand, is why you continue to use these weapons. Why not evolve beyond them?" Broderick's mind raced. What were they talking about? Were they mocking humanity? Were these weapons truly considered outdated by such advanced beings? He'd seen the power of these weapons, he had seen firsthand how humanity had fought for its survival, its independence, its dignity. But now, standing face to face with an alien intelligence that saw them as relics, his mind was filled with doubt. Were humans truly still clinging to something outdated, something primitive? Or was there something more beneath the surface that these beings couldn't yet comprehend? Before he could speak, another figure emerged from the ship, a smaller figure, wearing a simple coat and glasses. This one didn't have the same grandeur as the others. He was unarmed and seemingly unafraid. As he stepped forward, Broderick's heart skipped a beat. This was no alien warrior. This was someone different. The man in the coat smiled and turned his gaze toward Broderick. He didn't speak, but the look on his face said it all. There was a deeper story here, one that had yet to be revealed. The soldier's instincts screamed at him to run, to retreat, but something within him urged him to stay, to hear the rest of what was coming. And then, without another word, the man in the coat took a small device from his pocket and pressed it against his chest. A loud hum filled the air. And suddenly, Broderick understood. The truth would shock them all. The days that followed were filled with tension and confusion. Crimson Ridge, once a sleepy town with little more than the hum of daily life, had become a focal point for something beyond imagination. News spread fast, and soon, the world was watching. Colonel Broderick, now with the weight of the world on his shoulders, found himself sitting in a makeshift command center within the local high school. Across from him, the alien figure, the one who had asked about humanity's weapons, stood silently, watching the military and government officials shuffle through papers and exchange frantic whispers. They had made little progress. Broderick wasn't sure what to think. The strange events from the night before, the sudden appearance of the massive ship, the unnerving calm of the aliens, and the disorienting question about their weapons, still gnawed at him. What did they mean? And why did they care so much about the weapons humans still relied on? He leaned forward in his chair, pinching the bridge of his nose as if trying to ward off the headache building in his temples. "What do we do now?" one of the government officials asked, his voice laced with unease. Broderick didn't answer immediately. Instead, he watched the alien soldier from across the room. The tall, silver-skinned figure was unmoving, still as a statue. But there was something else in the way the alien stood, an unmistakable aura of curiosity. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't intimidating. It was almost thoughtful. "We wait," Broderick finally replied, his voice carrying the authority of years in service. "We wait for them to tell us what they want. And we figure out exactly what they mean by outdated." Later that evening, Broderick found himself in the town square again, standing just a few feet away from the alien craft. The sun had set, and the eerie glow of the ship's lights cast long shadows across the empty streets. The air felt thick with unspoken words and questions. He wasn't alone. A small group of townsfolk had gathered nearby, whispering among themselves. They didn't understand what was going on either, but there was a sense of shared confusion, a collective uncertainty. No one knew how to interact with these beings, or why they had come. Broderick's mind, though, wasn't on the crowd. His thoughts were occupied by the new figure, the one who had stepped out from the ship last night. The man in the coat, the one who looked different, not like the others. He hadn't yet spoken to Broderick, but the look he'd given him, it was clear that there was something important, something hidden, that the officer needed to understand. Broderick turned, following the faint echo of footsteps, and soon, he found himself face to face with the man in the coat. "I see you've been busy," Broderick said, the words coming out more harshly than he intended. He had questions, so many questions. But at this point, frustration had begun to simmer beneath his usual calm. The man smiled faintly. "Busy, yes. But you, Colonel, have your own set of questions. Don't you?" Broderick's eyes narrowed. "Who are you? And why are you here?" The man didn't answer directly. Instead, he nodded toward the ship. What do you think is inside there? Broderick glanced at the massive craft. I don't know. But I intend to find out. I assume you do too, if you're so eager to talk. The man chuckled, a soft sound. I'm not here to talk, Colonel. I'm here to show you something. Before Broderick could respond, the man stepped forward, a small device clutched in his hand. Without a word, he activated it. A shimmering light enveloped them both, and suddenly, Broderick found himself standing not in the square, but within a vast chamber. The ship was no longer just a structure looming above, it was alive, humming with energy, its walls pulsating with an eerie glow. Welcome, the man in the coat said, his voice now serious. Welcome to the heart of the ship. Broderick's breath caught in his throat as he took in the scene around him. The room was unlike anything he had ever seen, both familiar and alien at the same time. There were displays of light and holographic screens floating in midair. Creatures, different species, moved about the room, some looking at him curiously, others not at all. They appeared to be conducting research, examining strange objects, or communicating with each other through a form of telepathy. He turned to the man. This is... Yes, the man interrupted, his voice soft but firm. This is where we learn. Where we study. Where we understand. For the next few hours, the man in the coat led Broderick through the ship, showing him room after room filled with advanced technology, strange artifacts, and alien species in various stages of research. But it was one room, one display, that truly caught Broderick's attention. In the center of the room stood a tall, translucent screen. On it, the image of a battle played out, humans in combat against a formidable alien force. Broderick saw soldiers using everything from rifles to missiles to explosives. The humans fought bravely, but it was clear they were outmatched, outgunned. Yet, despite the overwhelming force of the aliens, the humans fought with grit, determination, and something the alien forces didn't have, heart. Broderick's jaw clenched. He knew these were historical battles, familiar faces flashed on the screen, men and women who had fought and died for humanity's survival. But what struck him was the way the aliens observed it, studying it, not as a simple war, but as a deeper question. Why? Why did humans fight like this, using these outdated weapons? The man in the coat turned to Broderick. This is why we ask about your weapons. It's not about the tools. It's about the will behind them. You see, in every conflict, every war, every struggle, humans survive because of something greater than technology. It's your heart. Your strength to keep going, no matter the odds. Broderick stood in silence, his thoughts swirling. He had always known that the human spirit was something special, but seeing it reflected through the eyes of these aliens, seeing them question it, analyze it, and ultimately marvel at it, was something he could never have imagined. He finally found his voice. So, you're not here to conquer us. The man smiled. No. We're here to understand. And perhaps, to learn from you. Broderick stood in the heart of the alien ship, surrounded by technology so advanced it made human achievements look like child's play. Yet, despite the alien technology all around him, it was the intangible concept that had left him speechless, the heart of humanity. He had seen it in the battlefield simulations, the unyielding courage of soldiers who never gave up, no matter the odds. But seeing the aliens awe at it, as if they'd never encountered such a thing, filled him with both pride and confusion. The man in the coat, who had introduced himself as a high-ranking member of the alien group, watched Broderick closely. His posture was calm, but there was a curiosity in his eyes, one that reflected not only a desire to understand but also a deeper yearning for something that eluded them. You see, the man began, his voice low and measured, our species has long studied the universe. We've conquered nearly every form of technology, evolved beyond the limits you know, and yet, we struggle with something you possess naturally, the will to persist when there is no hope. The ability to stand, fight, and survive not because of what you have, but because of who you are. Broderick absorbed the words, trying to reconcile the mystery of it all. Here he was, a military officer, a man who had spent his life fighting for his country and protecting his people, standing in the midst of beings who had traveled across galaxies and yet were fascinated by something as basic as human resilience. "But you still haven't told me what you want," Broderick said, his voice tinged with frustration. "Why come here? Why now?" The man's eyes flickered with something, perhaps hesitation, perhaps regret. "It's not just about the weapons, Colonel. Not about technology. It's about something far more dangerous to us, something we've never understood fully. We've encountered countless species, fought many wars, but never have we seen what you call heart in a being. And that is what terrifies us." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, Broderick felt a shift, like the ground beneath him was no longer solid. The aliens had encountered countless civilizations, powerful races who had mastered energy, technology, and space, but none of them had this heart that humans seemed to possess in abundance. Suddenly, Broderick understood. The aliens weren't just here to observe, they were here to study humanity because, in the depths of their highly logical and calculated existence, they couldn't comprehend the most unpredictable and dangerous aspect of the human spirit, its capacity for self-sacrifice, for hope in the face of certain defeat, for love that could move mountains. The man in the coat continued, his voice more somber now. "In our travels, we've seen countless species wiped out by natural disasters, by war, or by their own hubris. Some fought back, some fled, but none did what your species has done. You rise. You come back. You rebuild. We don't understand how you do it. It defies everything we've come to know about survival." Broderick's mind raced. He had heard the stories, heard about human perseverance in the darkest times. But hearing it from the mouth of an alien, a creature who had witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations, made the words hit harder than any battle he had ever fought. "What happens now?" Broderick asked, his voice quieter than before, a mixture of curiosity and concern. The man in the coat nodded, stepping aside to reveal a control panel on the far side of the room. "We study you. Not as an enemy, but as a model. You, Colonel, and your people, may have something that could change everything for us. For all of us." Broderick felt a strange sense of unease settle in his stomach. "What do you mean?" "The power to withstand the impossible," the man said. "Your species, it seems, has unlocked something we've never achieved. This heart, this indomitable will, it could reshape not only your world but ours. We are here not to conquer, but to learn. And in learning, we may understand how to defeat our own weaknesses." Broderick felt a chill run down his spine. The aliens were not here to annihilate humanity. They were here to learn from them. They were here to discover the secret behind what made humans fight so fiercely for survival. The following days were a blur. Broderick found himself spending more and more time aboard the alien ship, his role shifting from that of a commander to a reluctant ambassador. He didn't fully trust the aliens, but the more he interacted with them, the more he realized that their fascination with humanity wasn't born out of malice, but of admiration and desperation. The crew of the alien ship began to observe the humans of Crimson Ridge. They watched soldiers, civilians, and even children, studying how people reacted in times of stress, fear, and hope. It became evident that they weren't just observing for scientific purposes, they were trying to understand the essence of human strength. But not everyone was comfortable with the growing relationship between the aliens and humans. The more Broderick learned, the more questions arose. Why hadn't the aliens shown up sooner, when Earth had been in desperate need? Why were they only now expressing interest in humanity's survival mechanisms? One evening, as Broderick walked through the corridors of the ship, he came across a group of alien scientists gathered around a strange machine. The machine was small, compact, and almost human in appearance, its smooth surface glowing faintly. The man in the coat was standing by the machine, his expression unreadable. "Do you understand it now?" Broderick asked, stopping beside him. The man turned slowly, his eyes focused on the machine. "Not yet. But we are getting closer. We may never understand all of it, but the journey has already begun." Broderick watched the machine for a moment, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on him. He realized that this was more than just a study, it was a partnership, one that could shape the future of both humanity and the alien species. In the distance, a low rumble echoed through the ship. A sound that was becoming familiar to Broderick. Another twist. Another challenge. And once again, it would be the strength of the human spirit that would make all the difference. Broderick stood at the edge of the alien ship's observation deck, staring out at the void of space. The stars twinkled like cold beacons, distant and unfeeling. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the revelations over the past few days. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology, it wasn't firepower, it wasn't even strategy. It was something far deeper, the unwavering resilience of the human spirit. And for all their power and knowledge, the aliens were still struggling to understand it. But the uneasy feeling that had been creeping up on him since their first encounter with the aliens was starting to grow. Something wasn't right. They were asking questions about human survival, but why now? Why hadn't they approached sooner, during the wars, the disasters, or the darkest chapters in history? He had learned about the aliens' ongoing war with a hostile, nameless species, one that had wiped out entire civilizations with brutal efficiency. The aliens had fought back, but they had yet to find a way to defeat them. They had come to Earth, hoping to discover the key to humanity's resilience, to tap into the one thing that had kept humanity going when everything seemed lost. As the days passed, Broderick had grown close to the alien delegation. They seemed fascinated by every aspect of human life, how people loved, fought, grieved, and endured. Their fascination, however, wasn't just about understanding. It was about survival. They didn't just want to learn, they wanted to replicate. Broderick didn't know if it was desperation or admiration, but it was a fine line between seeking knowledge and exploitation. One evening, Broderick found himself in a conference room aboard the ship, sitting across from the man in the coat. The alien's calm demeanor hadn't changed, but there was something in his eyes, something darker. "Broderick," the alien began, "we've been observing humanity for a long time. And we've come to a realization. It's not just your will to survive. It's your willingness to sacrifice." Broderick furrowed his brow. "Sacrifice? What do you mean?" The alien leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Your species has a unique ability to place others above yourselves. In the face of overwhelming odds, you fight for your loved ones, for strangers, for the greater good. You make choices that defy logic and reason. And that, Colonel, is why you are the most dangerous species we've encountered." Broderick's heart raced. Dangerous? How? The very thing that drives you, the ability to fight for something beyond yourselves, has the power to bring down even the most advanced civilizations. It's a paradox. It makes you unpredictable. And it makes you stronger than we ever anticipated. As the conversation continued, Broderick felt the weight of the alien's words. He had always known that humanity's greatest strength was in its unity, its ability to come together even in the face of insurmountable odds. But hearing it from an alien, someone who had seen the fall of entire species, made him realize just how powerful that unity was. He stood up abruptly, his mind racing. The alien delegation hadn't just come to observe, they had come to understand how humanity could use its strengths to fight back against the very thing that had brought the universe to its knees, the enemy that had been ravaging planets and civilizations for centuries. But in doing so, they had put humanity in a dangerous position. What if they could replicate the human spirit? What if they could harness the power of human sacrifice, the raw, untamable will to fight for others, and turn it against humanity itself? Later that night, Broderick found himself in a quiet corner of the ship, deep in thought. He had learned more than he had ever imagined about the aliens and their war, but there was still one question that burned in his mind: what was the true cost of this partnership? The more he thought about it, the more it became clear. The aliens were struggling with their own identity. Their civilization had evolved to a point where logic, reason, and survival were paramount, but at the cost of something essential. Something they had lost long ago: the emotional, unpredictable side of their nature. The very thing that made humans who they were. And now, they were trying to reclaim it. Not for peace, not for the greater good, but for survival. Broderick's instincts told him to be cautious. The more he learned, the more he realized that humanity was being drawn into something much larger than a simple alliance. The aliens were on the brink of something desperate, something dangerous. And if humanity wasn't careful, they could become pawns in a war that they didn't even fully understand. Days passed, and Broderick began to notice strange things happening aboard the ship. There were whispers in the corridors, aliens speaking in hushed tones as if they were planning something. The crew's interactions had become more rigid, more tense. And the experiments they were conducting on humans had taken a darker turn. Broderick couldn't ignore it any longer. Something was wrong. He decided to confront the man in the coat, to ask him outright what was happening. But when he reached the aliens' quarters, he was stopped by two guards. They weren't violent, but their posture was unyielding. "Colonel Broderick," one of the guards said, "the Council has requested your presence elsewhere." Immediately, Broderick's pulse quickened. He could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. Something had changed. The alliance was no longer what it seemed. In the depths of the ship, Broderick was led to a large room filled with advanced equipment. At the center of the room stood the man in the coat, surrounded by a group of alien scientists. They were focused on a display, their faces grim. "What's going on?" Broderick demanded, his voice rising. The man in the coat turned to face him, his expression unreadable. "We've learned what we needed, Colonel. It's time to move forward." Before Broderick could react, the room was flooded with a bright, blinding light. The bright light that flooded the room was almost blinding. Broderick shielded his eyes instinctively, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of what was happening. His heart pounded in his chest, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Something was terribly wrong. The man in the coat didn't flinch, standing perfectly still as if the light didn't affect him at all. The alien scientists around him seemed unfazed too. Broderick could feel a growing unease settling in his stomach. He had been on the brink of discovering something vital, something crucial for humanity's future. But now, it was clear, he had underestimated the depth of the aliens' plans. The light dimmed slowly, and Broderick blinked, trying to adjust his eyes. As his vision returned, he saw the group of aliens still in their positions, but the room had changed. The walls were no longer metal, they shimmered with an ethereal, translucent quality, like the very air around him had transformed. The atmosphere felt thick, charged with a kind of energy he had never encountered. The man in the coat stepped forward. His face was emotionless, but Broderick could see the glint of something darker in his eyes, something that wasn't there before. It was a chilling realization. "You were never meant to understand," the man said, his voice colder than before. "We have learned what we came for, Colonel. Your species has something we desperately need. The resilience, the will to fight against the odds, it's the one thing that has eluded us for eons. We tried to replicate it, to understand it, but there's a flaw in our design that we can't fix." Broderick took a step back, his mind racing. "What are you talking about? What do you need from us?" The alien's lips curled into a thin smile. "We need your sacrifice." The words hung in the air like a heavy weight. Broderick couldn't believe what he was hearing. Sacrifice? He had known the aliens were interested in human strength and survival, but this was something entirely different. It wasn't about understanding humanity's power anymore. They wanted to take it. I don't understand, Broderick stammered. What do you mean, sacrifice? We have been watching your species for centuries, the man in the coat explained. We have studied your wars, your losses, your victories. And one thing is clear, your greatest strength is your willingness to give up everything for others. You sacrifice your own lives, your resources, your time, everything you hold dear, for those you love, for those in need. And that is the one thing we cannot replicate. Broderick's stomach churned. You're saying you want us to give that to you? To teach you how to sacrifice? The alien's eyes narrowed. No. We don't want to learn how to sacrifice. We want to harness it. We need it to survive. Without it, we will perish at the hands of our enemies. Broderick's mind was spinning. He had always known that humanity's greatest strength was in its heart, the willingness to protect one another, to put the greater good above individual needs. But now, hearing these words from the aliens, it felt like that strength was being twisted into something far darker. You can't take that from us, Broderick said, his voice steady despite the fear rising inside him. It's not something you can control. It's not just about giving up something for a cause, it's about being human. The alien didn't flinch. We don't have the luxury of choice. Our enemies are closing in. Every day we fight, we lose more of our people, more of our worlds. If we don't find a way to replicate your species' strength, we will fall. And we cannot afford to fall. Broderick was silent for a long moment, taking in the gravity of the situation. The aliens were desperate. They had come to Earth not for peace, not for knowledge, but for survival. And humanity, with all its flaws and imperfections, held the key to their survival. He knew what he had to do. Let me talk to the others, Broderick said finally. We need to figure out a way to stop this. We can't let you manipulate us, or let you take something so fundamental to what we are. The man in the coat studied him for a moment, then nodded, his expression unreadable. Very well, Colonel. But know this, time is running out. Our enemies will not wait, and neither will we. Later that night, Broderick found himself alone in his quarters, pacing back and forth. The alien's words echoed in his mind, each one more haunting than the last. He had come to this ship with the hope of forging an alliance, of learning from the aliens, of finding a way to fight back against the looming darkness of the universe. But now, it seemed as if they were just as much a threat as the enemies they were all trying to survive against. Broderick's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden knock at his door. He opened it to find the young officer who had been working closely with him. She looked nervous, but there was something in her eyes that told Broderick she had news. Colonel, we've intercepted something, she said, her voice low. It's from the alien fleet. They've been in contact with their homeworld. There's a new development. Broderick's heart skipped a beat. What is it? They've started making preparations, the officer said, her eyes wide with concern. They're not just planning to replicate our resilience. They're planning to force us into it. They want us to undergo a process. One that will strip us of our free will, make us act as they do, without hesitation, without doubt. We will become nothing more than tools for their war. Broderick's blood ran cold. This was worse than he could have imagined. The aliens weren't just interested in humanity's strength, they wanted to break it, twist it into something unrecognizable. As Broderick stood in the dimly lit corridor, his mind raced. He had to stop this. He had to find a way to keep humanity from becoming just another cog in the alien machine. But the clock was ticking, and every second that passed brought them closer to a future where human sacrifice wasn't a choice, it was a weapon. Broderick's mind raced as he processed the officer's words. The reality of what the aliens were planning hit him like a ton of bricks. They weren't just interested in humanity's resilience. They wanted to take control of it, turn it into a weapon they could wield at will. It was a nightmarish twist he hadn't anticipated. The officer standing before him, still shaken, broke him from his thoughts. "Colonel, what do we do now?" Broderick's face hardened with resolve. "We fight. We find a way to stop them before it's too late." But how? That was the question that gnawed at him. The aliens had already proven they could manipulate their surroundings and bend human will. How could humanity hope to stand against such power? The odds felt insurmountable, and for a brief moment, Broderick questioned whether it was even possible to win. But then he remembered something: humanity's strength wasn't just in its ability to sacrifice, it was in its refusal to accept defeat, to bend even in the face of overwhelming odds. He wasn't going to let these creatures take that away. In the days that followed, Broderick assembled a small group of the most trusted officers and scientists. They huddled in the dimly lit strategy room, the weight of their task hanging heavily in the air. The stakes were higher than ever. They were fighting for their very existence, not just against the alien invaders, but against a force that threatened the core of what it meant to be human. "Here's the situation," Broderick said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "The aliens are preparing to force our resilience, to make us lose everything that defines us as a species. We can't let that happen." One of the senior officers spoke up, his voice tinged with disbelief. "How do we stop them? They're too advanced. Their technology, their manipulation, it's beyond anything we've seen." Broderick nodded, acknowledging the truth of the statement. "I know. But I believe we still have one thing they don't: humanity's adaptability. We're not bound by the same rules. We think differently. We fight for each other. And that's something they can't replicate." The room fell silent for a moment. Each of them understood the enormity of the challenge ahead. The aliens weren't just attacking them, they were trying to fundamentally change what it meant to be human. But the team was resolute. They would find a way to fight back. Later that night, Broderick met with his closest confidant, Lieutenant Quinn, a sharp, no-nonsense officer who had been with him through thick and thin. "We need a plan," Broderick said, pacing back and forth. "We've seen the kind of hold they have on their own people. We need to break that. We need to find a way to disrupt their ability to control us." Quinn nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. We've been trying to use conventional methods of resistance, fighting back with force, subterfuge. But if they can manipulate our minds, we're not dealing with just an enemy army. We're facing a system of control we don't fully understand." Broderick stopped pacing. "We need to hit them where it hurts. I think we can break their control using the one thing they haven't anticipated: human emotion." Quinn raised an eyebrow. "Emotion?" "Yes. It's our greatest strength. It's also the one thing they can't replicate. Their control is based on cold logic and strength. But we have something more powerful than that. Love. Loyalty. Compassion. These things fuel us in ways that pure logic cannot." The plan was audacious, and Broderick knew the risks. They needed to infiltrate the heart of the alien fleet and deliver a message, a signal that would disrupt their control systems. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be painless. But it was their best chance. "We'll need to divide into teams," Broderick said. "One team to create a diversion, and another to plant the signal disruptor at the heart of their fleet. We've got one shot at this, and we can't afford to fail." Quinn smiled grimly. "We're not the type to fail, Colonel." The plan went into motion. Under the cover of darkness, the team slipped past the alien security system, using their training in the very emotions the aliens sought to control. They moved with purpose, their hearts beating as one. Every step they took was a step closer to reclaiming their freedom. But as they approached their target, the true cost of their mission became clear. Broderick watched as one of the officers, a young man who had volunteered for the mission, was struck down by a blast from an alien weapon. His body hit the ground with a sickening thud, and Broderick's heart skipped a beat. They were running out of time. "Keep moving," Broderick shouted, his voice cutting through the tension. "We're almost there." Quinn, who had been by his side through so many battles, was the first to reach the control room. She worked quickly, her hands steady as she planted the disruptor in the heart of the alien network. The moment she activated it, the entire room seemed to hum with power. The lights flickered, and the alien communications system crackled with static. Then, as if the world held its breath, the power shifted. The cold, calculating control that had hung over humanity for so long began to fracture. The alien's grip loosened, if only for a moment. Broderick and his team stood in the control room, holding their breath. They had done it. They had struck the first blow. The disruptor was working, the aliens' hold over their minds was weakening. But Broderick knew this was just the beginning. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. The alien fleet towered above them, an overwhelming force of technological might. But beneath that cold, metallic exterior was a truth that Broderick and his team now understood: their strength wasn't just in their weapons or their machines, it was in their humanity. And as they prepared for the final confrontation, Broderick knew this would be the moment that defined them. "We've come this far," Broderick said, his voice steady, yet filled with a resolve that could not be shaken. He looked around at the faces of his team, each of them marked by loss, each of them carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. "We've done what they never thought possible. Now it's time to finish this." The plan was simple: strike at the heart of the alien command center and deliver a final blow to the control systems that had manipulated humanity for so long. But the cost of this final assault would be high. They knew that. But Broderick couldn't help but feel a spark of hope flicker within him, hope that they could actually win, that they could break free from this nightmare. As they moved deeper into the heart of the alien command center, the air grew thicker, the tension palpable. Every step felt like it could be their last, but Broderick pushed those thoughts aside. There was no turning back now. Lieutenant Quinn, ever the strategist, motioned for the team to spread out as they infiltrated the command center. The alien defenses were formidable, but the signal disruptor they had planted earlier had weakened their systems. That gave them the opening they needed. "On my signal," Quinn whispered, her voice like steel, "we move. This is our only chance." Broderick nodded, his heart hammering in his chest. The sound of his breathing filled his ears, drowning out everything else. Time seemed to slow as they approached the heart of the alien fleet's operations. The doors to the control room loomed ahead, their sleek, alien design a stark contrast to the humans who stood before them. Broderick's fingers tightened around his weapon as he prepared for the final push. The alien systems that had controlled them for so long, that had manipulated their thoughts, their actions, were now vulnerable. It was their one chance to strike at the heart of the machine. With a single motion, Quinn hit the button, and the doors slid open. Inside, the alien command center hummed with a cold, calculated energy. But this time, the hum was weaker, the control systems wavering. Broderick's team rushed inside, their weapons at the ready. The aliens inside the room were not the cold, calculating entities Broderick had come to expect. Instead, they seemed almost human. Their faces twisted in confusion as they looked up, realizing that their control was failing. Broderick felt a surge of anger rise within him. These creatures had manipulated and destroyed so many lives. They had caused untold suffering. "Take them down," Broderick ordered, his voice like thunder. His team opened fire, their weapons discharging in a cascade of light. The aliens' resistance was fierce, but their systems were faltering. Broderick's heart raced as he fought through the chaos, the sound of gunfire deafening in his ears. Each shot felt like a step closer to freedom, to the life they had fought for. Then, a voice cut through the noise, a voice that chilled Broderick to his core. "Why do you fight so hard?" The alien leader stood in the center of the room, his eyes glowing with an eerie light. "You cannot stop us. We have already won." But Broderick was unfazed. "You don't get it. We're not fighting because we think we can win. We're fighting because we're human." The alien leader sneered. "Your emotions are your greatest weakness. You will fall, just like all the others." Broderick took a step forward, his eyes never leaving the alien. "You may have us outgunned, but you will never break us. That's something you'll never understand." With a final, defiant roar, Broderick and his team charged forward. The fight was brutal, each moment more intense than the last. But Broderick felt something deep inside him, a fire, a sense of purpose that he had never experienced before. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something greater. The final blow came not from a weapon, but from the heart. Broderick's team worked together, using their knowledge of the alien systems and their human instincts to override the control center. The signal disruptor they had planted earlier activated once more, sending a pulse through the heart of the fleet. The alien leader's smug expression faltered as the systems around him began to collapse. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The alien leader's eyes widened in disbelief as the command center began to power down. The lights flickered and then went dark. "We did it," Quinn whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. Broderick stood still for a moment, letting the enormity of the victory wash over him. The aliens' grip on humanity had been shattered. The war was over. But then, as the silence of the room settled in, Broderick turned to his team, his voice firm. "This is just the beginning." The final moments were bittersweet. There had been casualties, sacrifices that could never be undone. But in that moment, Broderick realized something powerful. Humanity had faced the darkest force the universe could throw at them, and they had not only survived, they had triumphed. They had proven that no matter how advanced an enemy was, no matter how powerful their technology, there was one thing that could never be defeated: the human spirit. The alien delegation stood in silence, watching the Earth below from the observation deck of their hovering ship. The stars stretched endlessly above, yet their focus remained on the planet that had defied their expectations in every way. The retired soldier, standing among them, folded his arms as he stared at the world he had fought to protect. "Now you understand," he said, his voice steady. "Weapons are tools, nothing more. It's the people behind them that matter." One of the alien envoys, a tall being with luminous blue eyes, nodded slowly. "We have witnessed your people's history, the pain, the sacrifice, the perseverance. We feared your weapons were relics of a violent past, but now we see they are symbols of something far greater." The aliens had come believing humanity clung to outdated tools out of ignorance or stubbornness. Instead, they had discovered a civilization that wielded those tools with wisdom and purpose. Humanity's strength had never been in the weapons themselves, but in the unwavering resolve to stand against oppression, to fight for justice, and to protect those who could not protect themselves. The soldier looked at the alien leader. "So what now?" he asked. The leader exchanged glances with his companions. "We will not interfere with your progress. You are not a race driven by destruction, as we once feared. You are a species of warriors, yes, but also of protectors. Your spirit is something we have never encountered before." A faint smile crossed the soldier's lips. "Well, I'd say we're just getting started." The aliens turned back toward their ship's controls. "We will depart soon. But before we do, we wish to offer you something in return for what you have taught us." The soldier raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" The alien leader gestured toward a shimmering console. A holographic projection flickered to life, displaying star systems beyond anything humanity had yet discovered. "Knowledge," the leader said. New worlds. Technologies that will help you grow, on your own terms. The soldier exhaled, realizing the weight of the moment. Humanity was about to take its next step into the stars, not as a reckless force, but as a species that had earned the respect of an advanced civilization. As the aliens prepared to depart, the soldier turned to watch their ship rise into the night sky, leaving behind only the faint hum of energy. He stood there for a long time, thinking about the lessons learned, not just by the aliens, but by humanity itself. In the end, the greatest weapon was not the gun, nor the blade, nor even technology. It was the unbreakable human spirit. And that would never be outdated.